Welcome back to AI Today. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Badeau, and we've been talking about cybersecurity threats and how artificial intelligence is being used to help facilitate some of the actions of the hacking community, and really it's exploded recently. As we've seen, it's a huge problem for a lot of folks. I get emails, hundreds of emails every week, really asking about what can we do to help protect it, what can we do to make sure that our businesses are protected. And I unfortunately don't have a fantastic answer for them. I give them the rundown on the normal things that we can do, but really hackers are gaining an advantage. And one of the critical things, though, that I think folks are really concerned about is what our next guest is going to talk about. It's a pleasure to have Mr. Ben Neivert back from DBT Aero. He's the chief of staff over there. Ben is a great friend of the show. He's been on. He's talked about a lot of things when it comes to the aerospace industry and how AI is helping facilitate that and give DBT Aero a significant advantage. Ben's got a fantastic background when it comes to 25 years of experience, really across multiple countries and multiple industries and multiple segments, and it's really fantastic. Ben, great for you to be back with us again.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me. Always appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, and an exciting one this week because, we hear about the power grid. We hear about all the other things that are in the media about how and what sort of protections we need to take against, and things we should worry about when it comes to systems and when it comes to, non-traditional systems that we see, being talked about. And aerospace and the aerospace industry and the FAA and radars and all those other systems are a high priority target. From your perspective, Ben, what are some of the things that whether it's the government, whether it's private industry, what are some of the things that they're doing to try to protect some of those systems out there from these next generation hacking events?
Well, a very good friend of mine used to be the chief information security officer in the White House, and he can assure they're trying to protect everything with various levels of success, depending on what they directly control and what they don't. And there's a number of strategies that they follow when they are looking at protecting systems. Some of the most critical systems, they use air gap strategies. In other words, those systems either work through a completely private network or don't talk to a network at all. And so everything going into that system has to be certified, delivered basically in a disk or some other USB key that they can assure that what's on that key is clean, and then they run their update. There's always the chance, as we saw with the air traffic control system a number of years ago, where they made a fairly minor programming error. So, those sorts of things do happen, but it wasn't an AI system hacking. It was just simple human error in a code that caused some loss of data. They didn't lose the data, they were able to recover it from backup, but for the pilots filing their flight plans and looking at live data to plan their flights, there was a lot of information missing for a brief period of time. But a lot of those systems are air gapped. A lot of those systems use advanced security to check the code, to make sure the code hasn't changed. When you get to, our product, like an aircraft, it's really an air gap system. When you look at a GPS in an aircraft, there isn't a way to remotely update a lot of those systems. You have to bring the update to the airplane, mechanically plug something into the aircraft, then you run the update, and the software actually checks for certain validity keys in that software to be sure that it's the right software and it's been created by Jeppesen or whoever it is, and that it's correct and clean. So yeah, I mean, you're right. But the challenge is you got to protect everything. And yeah, there are priorities, but the way aviation works, you can't really provide a chink in the armor. If they get in one place, they can create a lot of havoc, even though they can't get in other places.
That's right.
So it's a very broad defense.
Yeah, and I think that goes to a larger discussion that I have with a lot of folks, that it's still driven by humans, and you have to be just as concerned about the insider threat and the person that is actually doing that, as opposed to the AI itself. You know, I go back to my favorite Christmas movie. I know I'm going to get a lot of emails when I say this, but it was Die Hard 2. Remember, you know, them taking over the radar and all the other things at the Dulles Airport, and that was, oh my goodness, that was 20 years ago, right? And you know, it's those sort of events that folks need to be more concerned about, I think, as opposed to, for these types of systems, an AI you know, attack when it comes to that. From, you know, Ben, when you talk about air gap systems, I think that's a really important key. And you mentioned it about the airplanes and the aircrafts. How are you all at DBT Aero looking at vulnerabilities and cyber threats and those kind of things, and insider threats, if we even want to get into that a little bit?
Well, I won't go into too much specifics, as you can imagine, but
Mm-hmm.
we have very talented IT. We have some people that are very, very experienced at securing data. So we look at, again, a multi-level approach. We know the people that we're issuing usernames and passwords to. We monitor to some extent the transactions that they're following that have to do with our systems. We don't look at what they do outside, and a lot of people that work with us do other things. So we look at what they're doing within DBT Aero in our collaborative database. We know where they go. We can tell if they're copying large quantities of data. When we work with email, at the moment, we're in the process of looking at significantly upgrading the security of our email. But the email we have right now is secure, and it does protect us to some extent, you know, to the broader extent of keeping people out unless they're supposed to be in. And it does protect us. The IT guys can look at what's happening within the email system and identify whether somebody's doing something unusual. Now, we don't use a very advanced AI. We're a fairly small company, but I do know and have worked with in previous jobs companies that specialize in these network security operations offices, you know, SOC, security operations centers, and they use a huge amount of AI to fight AI. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking at patterns. They're looking at patterns of traffic, at volume, and they're trying to understand whether something unusual is occurring within the first few seconds of that occurrence. So they can immediately block it, determine whether it's valid or not, and then either allow it or not allow it and take the appropriate action. So yeah, AI as a tool for evil, yeah, it's very dangerous, but it's also very powerful as a tool for the good. It can look at a very large amount of data and highlight anomalies, even when those anomalies haven't, you know, might have occurred in the past, but looked only slightly different. And a human scanning an error log or scanning a network log would never have picked it out. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of those activities here at DBT Aero. Answer your question specifically, we monitor the systems that we provide to our staff, and we encrypt what we believe needs to be encrypted. There is email with outside parties. We do have an encryption solution that we can share with outside parties so that we can encrypt end to end with them. But in a lot of cases, the outside party information doesn't need to be encrypted, so we don't go through the hassle of getting them into the encryption system, and then they have to remember to use it when they're talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we try and focus our efforts to protect our data on our collaborative database and some other places where we're storing information so that
Yeah.
we can be very good at that.
Yeah, that's great. And I do want to say to our audience, you know, and I did a lot of research on this over the last week and a half or so, and have followed this for a while. I have not been able to find any verifiable, you know, evidence that says that somebody has been able to use the Wi-Fi on a commercial airliner to hack into a system. I mean, I know that would scare everybody. And, every time somebody says they can't reproduce it. I have not found, one strong case that has ever, happened. And, Ben, is there anything that you have ever heard of around that? And that supports that, or that can refute what I just said?
Well, support it. I mean, those are air gap systems. The public
Yep,
Wi-Fi in an aircraft is not used by the aircraft. The
that's right.
aircraft uses completely different system. There have been numerous cases of people turning on, purposely, maliciously activating hotspots that look like the public system. They do it in airports. They do it all over, but specifically in aviation. There's been numerous cases of someone activating a hotspot, and that way people logging into their hotspot, if they're not using a virtual private network solution, a VPN, the packets traveling through their hotspot can be viewed. They can
Hmm.
collect the packets, they can look at what's in them, they can at least look at where they came from and where they're going to. Now, if whenever I'm in public and I have to use a network, I'll turn on a VPN,
Yep.
virtual private network, and that way all they can see is that there is traffic from my phone to some server that the VPN provides. The packet is completely encrypted. So they
Yep.
can't read the header of my communications to a bank because they
Yes.
don't know it's all encrypted inside the packet. And yeah, if they're wandering around with a high-end data system, they might spend a few years and try and break the packets up. But generally speaking, it takes too long to do it for it to be of any value to anybody. But you're right. From a Wi-Fi point of view, no one has hacked the plane. They just create all kinds of interesting conversation amongst passengers, or problems where you log into someone's hotspot, do a bank transaction because you think it's public, and that person now has a lot more information about you and your bank than you wanted them to.
That's right.
So
And
those are
yeah.
things to be careful. Go ahead.
Yes, yes, yeah, that's fantastic. Ben, really quick, where can people find you at?
The easiest way is ben.neivert at dbtaero.com. Sorry, at dbt.aero, ben.neivert at dbt.aero. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn under Ben Neivert. So I'd love to have people look us up or go to the DBT Aero page on LinkedIn and follow us. We have plenty of interesting information to look at.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fantastic. Thanks, Ben. Like always, I appreciate you being here with us. Great conversation. I know that as we see more of these, hacking events, that it's going to be a continued part of our conversation that we have, and we're definitely going to deep dive into it more later on, especially as these things start to happen, even more frequently than they are. Thank you again for that. And with that, please stick around for our next segment. We're going to be talking more about some cybersecurity events and other hacking type activities that are taking place. And stick with us, and we'll be right back after this short commercial break. Thank you.